Although Brian Moser's participation in Dexter Original Sin was likely unexpected, there were some subliminal clues that the eventual ice truck killer would appear in the Dexter prequel series. The ice truck killer was undoubtedly the serial killer with the closest connection to Dexter and one of the best in all of Dexter. However, despite his popularity, it appeared like Brian Moser would not be allowed to appear in Original Sin because he didn't disclose himself to Dexter until 2006, which is years after the events of the prequel series. The NHI killer, Brian Moser, was reintroduced in Original Sin despite that timeline problem. In fact, the show did a lot to set up Brian's appearance, which was a pretty stunning twist for Original Sin Episode 8. There were 9 different clues that Brian Moser would appear in Original Sin, and it's likely that some viewers missed at least one of them. These clues ranged from obvious Easter eggs that had to be about Brian, to more subliminal ones that implied he would be significant, and even a few plot twists that allowed him to go unnoticed. In the early days of Original Sin, a scene in the series led many fans to speculate that Brian Moser would appear. Dexter was reserving a seat for the Miami Metro detectives when a young man, Roby Atal, approached him in Original Sin Episode 2. He asked Dexter if the seat was taken, but many viewers saw that he looked somewhat like Brian, and his age would have been consistent with the chronology of Original Sin. It appears highly probable that the restaurant patron was in fact Brian Moser, after Harry put together the identity of the NHI killer. The fact that someone who looked so much like Brian Moser contacted Dexter was a major clue that Brian was involved in the prequel series, even if it wasn't confirmed until weeks later. It's reasonable to believe that Brian was attempting to reach Dexter in Original Sin Episode 2 as well, as he did spend the entirety of Dexter Season 1 doing so. Brian might have been reunited with his brother 15 years sooner than he actually was, if Dexter hadn't been holding a seat for many police officers. The history of Original Sin also gave away that the diner was Brian Moser. When Miami Metro discovered that Rudy Cooper was truly Brian and the ice truck killer in Season 1 of Dexter, Angel Batista, played by David Zayas, told the department that Brian had been discharged from a mental health facility at the age of 21. Given that Dexter is 20 in Original Sin and Brian is his elder brother, the show is set at the ideal time for Brian to leave his mental health facility and attempt to get in touch with his estranged biological brother. Brian and Dexter's meeting was not just feasible, but also more likely according to Original Sin's time frame. The timeline of the latter is one of the main areas where Dexter and Original Sin diverge. By setting the story a few years later, Original Sin might have easily avoided those issues, allowing Deb to mature into at least a teenager and Dexter to graduate from college. Original Sin would only have altered Dexter's timeline so drastically in order to facilitate a significant connection, such as Dexter meeting Brian earlier than anticipated. Episode 6 of Original Sin provided viewers with one of the more direct clues about Brian Moser's surprise. Dexter almost was struck by an ice truck while he was pursuing Levi Reed through downtown Miami. The truck in Original Sin Episode 6 was even made by the same business that Brian Moser, the notorious ice truck killer, used in Dexter, Miami Chills. Looking back, it appears like Original Sin was clearly hinting at what Harry would learn a few episodes later. Another significant clue to Brian's actual function in the series was the NHI killer that Dexter, Maria Lagerta, Christina Milian, Harry, and Clark Sanders, Aaron Jennings, have been looking into. Although Brian's identity as the NHI killer is evident after Original Sin Episode 8, the case also implicated him before Harry put the pieces together. Dexter claimed that the NHI killer was a new murderer, and that his methods were different, since he was still determining the most enjoyable manner to murder someone when he initially recognized the serial killer. Given that he would have just begun killing, that is almost a perfect description of Brian. Throughout Original Sin, Brian Moser has also received a lot of attention, which subtly suggests that he will play a significant role. Original Sin makes a point of highlighting Brian and demonstrating his early sociopathic tendencies in some of Harry's flashbacks to his time spent with Laura Moser. For instance, Laura described him as a threat to all the local babysitters because he enjoyed pulling the tails off live lizards. Unusually for a small youngster, Brian even stabbed one of Hector Estrada's men during their invasion of the Moser home. Only after it was confirmed that Brian Moser was the NHI killer did one of Original Sin's indications about what it had in store for him become fully clear. Only Harry, Bobby Watt, Reno Wilson, Captain Aaron Spencer, Patrick Dempsey, and Camilla Figg, Sarah Kinsey, remained at Miami Metro long enough to recall Brian being in the shipping container with Dexter at the beginning of Original Sin. Following Spencer's identification as the kidnapper, Dexter's pursuit of him, and Bobby Watt's shooting, it was evident that Original Sin was paving the way for Brian to enter covertly. In addition to eliminating every character who could be able to identify Brian Moser, the prequel series made a point of demonstrating that Harry had already concealed Brian's presence from Miami Metro. Harry asked Camilla to confirm that Dexter had been deleted from Brian's file in Dexter, Original Sin Episode 4. Dexter's admirers were already aware that Harry had removed any evidence that Dexter was Laura Moser's child from the files. Therefore, it appears that the whole purpose of the chat was to prepare the way for Brian's covert comeback.